Exactly 80 years ago was the summer of 1934. The summer of 1934 was a turning point in the history of this country and in the world. In the summer of 1934, the working class fought back. In San Francisco, the dock workers shut down the city with a general strike. In Minneapolis, the coal drivers, organized into the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, shut down their city with a general strike. Auto light workers in Toledo, Ohio, had a general strike. Textile workers went on strike all throughout the South. And hotel workers here in New York City also went out on strike that year. It was 1 year later, in 1935, that the Wagner Act was signed into law. The Wagner Act made it federal law that workers had the right to join a union and to go on strike demanding better conditions. We know that history is made by millions of people in motion. It takes hundreds of thousands of people who are willing to stand up and say, we aren't going to take this shit anymore. And it is that makes the rich and powerful afraid and makes them do things like sign the Wagner Act or pass Social Security or eventually pass the Voting Rights Act or destroy Jim Crow in the South. History is made by millions of people in motion. However, in 1934, when thousands of workers all throughout this country were in the streets fighting against the bosses, demanding better conditions, there was another factor. In 1934, not a single one of the heroic strikes were led by the conservative leaders of the American Federation of Labor, or the AFL. In San Francisco, in Minneapolis, in Toledo, in the textile mills of the South, it was communists who led the workers. Revolutionary leadership is key in the class struggle. It took communist leaders, armed with the science of Marxism-Leninism, to shut down the country in 1934, 80 years ago. And this is just as true today as it was 80 years ago. If you want proof that revolutionary leadership is important, you can go to Boston. The school bus drivers in Boston, organized into Local 8751 of the United Steelworkers, have the best contract in the country. They are the highest paid, they have the best benefits, and they have the fairest disciplinary procedures. Bus drivers' unions all around the country are openly envious of what the Boston School Bus Drivers Union has. The Boston School Bus Drivers Union got this amazing contract through fighting, and they have fought under the leadership of people who are members of Workers' World Party. Now let's be clear. It's not just us that understands how important revolutionary leaders are in winning victories for the labor movement and the working class. The bosses also understand it. That's why they fired 4 leaders of the School Bus Drivers Union. That's why the city of Boston brought in the ruthless corporation known as Veolia to break this union. The bosses know that the School Bus Drivers Union in Boston sets an example. By having such a good contract, having such high wages, they are an inspiration to bus drivers all around the country. And they're not just an inspiration to bus drivers, but to teachers, to nurses, to fast food workers, and to workers everywhere. They are proof that fighting back works, and that going out on strike, electing radical labor leaders, and refusing to let the bosses walk all over you is a winning strategy in the struggle for better conditions. Veolia is in the process of negotiating a new contract with the school bus drivers. Even though the 4 leaders of the School Bus Drivers Union have been fired, they were still elected to the negotiating committee. On July 30th, the day the contract was set to expire, the school bus drivers and their allies had Solidarity Day 3. Because their contract allows them to use the office at the Veolia office for union business at any time while the contract's in effect, they actually went in to the office, and for the last, until midnight, until their contract expired, they were in that office and they were rallying. The police were called, but the leaders of the union showed the police the union contract that said they had the right to be there, and the police backed off. But then, the next day, the city of Boston dropped a whole slew of criminal charges against Stephen Kirschbaum. They charged him with breaking and entering, which is obviously nonsense, as the building was not locked and he was a member of the union, legally allowed to be in the building under the contract. They claim he assaulted someone with a table, but there are scores of witnesses who saw that no such thing occurred. On Monday, Steve is going to be arraigned in Boston's criminal court. He is facing very serious criminal charges. Right now, the Boston school bus drivers are mobilizing everyone they can to try to pack the courtroom and show support for Steve. If there is any shred of honesty in the court, the charges won't stick and will be immediately dismissed. There are scores of witnesses who saw what happened and can testify that no assault with a deadly weapon took place. Currently, Stephen Kirschbaum is a negotiator working out the new contract with Veolia. The mayor of Boston has extended the contract as long as negotiations go on. Now, the Boston school bus drivers in Boston very much need our support. Steve is facing very serious criminal charges, and in addition, there could be a strike very soon. One of the most promising things, however, is that the Boston school bus drivers have built a beautiful united front. At Solidarity Day 3, there were speeches from labor leaders from all throughout the city. In addition, there were speeches from peace activists. Because Veolia is so ruthlessly connected to Israel and its crimes against the Palestinian people, Jewish Voices for Peace came out to support the bus drivers. In addition, the Nation of Islam, one of the most important black nationalist groups in this country, brought its forces out to support the bus drivers. The reason that the bus drivers have been able to build this huge, effective, united front to defend their union is because of the work that they have done over the years. When black revolutionary city councilman Chuck Turner was getting kicked out of city council and fired, the bus drivers union was there supporting Chuck Turner. When the U.S. was getting ready to invade Iraq in 2003, the bus drivers went to D.C. to protest. When Sarah Palin held a disgusting Tea Party rally in Boston, members of the union charged the stage and tried to shut down her racist hate. When Occupy Boston set up shop, this union set up a tent along with the Young Radicals in solidarity with Occupy Boston. The billionaires are desperately trying to get rid of the revolutionary leadership of Local 8751, but they will fail. One interesting aspect of the campaign against the bus drivers has been a campaign personally demonizing Stephen Kirschbaum, saying, quote, "He's a communist, he's dangerous, he's a union thug." Well, this campaign isn't working, and it's not just because the allegations are so obviously false. Boston is a city just like any other city in the United States. Workers' wages are going down, homes are being foreclosed, unemployment is rising, and cops are out of control, killing and brutalizing people. There are a lot of people who see reports about Stephen Kirschbaum being a rough and tough union thug and think, damn, it's about time we had somebody who fought like that for working people, instead of the thugs who work for the billionaires. That's what the leaders of Local 8751 are doing, fighting for the working class, and showing everyone exactly what it means to be a communist. Being a communist is not about a bunch of dusty books that no one understands. It's not about fur hats. It's not about Stalin mustaches. Being a communist is about pushing the working class into motion, beating back the capitalists, and eventually trying to build a society where there are no bosses and workers like us have the power. The bosses are hoping that they can crush Local 8751 and they can move ahead and squash working people all over the country. But I think that the opposite can also happen. I think the bus drivers can wage a big fight and beat back Veolia. And when they do that, they can inspire others to fight back. 80 years ago, general strikes swept this country, scaring the hell out of the bosses. Let's hope that Local 8751 can be the spark that lights the coming prairie fire of workers rising up and saying no to austerity, no to cutbacks, and demanding their right to jobs, education, and health care. Now, I want to just end with this point. In all the important fights in labor history in the country, there's never been a fight where the local forces were left to fight on their own, to do it by themselves. You can go as far back as in Spokane, Washington, when the city council passed an ordinance banning the industrial workers of the world from giving speeches on the street. Organizers from all over the United States went to Spokane, and one by one they would get up and give a speech and get arrested, until there were so many people in the jails that the city backed down because they didn't have any room to arrest the people. You can go to 1934. I mentioned the textile strike 80 years ago. One key factor in that was young people and organizers from Chicago, from New York City, who went down to the South to fight against racism and low wages and to organize in the textile mills. The civil rights movement involved a lot of young people from all over the country going to the South, standing with the people against racism. Now, the bus drivers in Boston will lead the upcoming struggle. That's absolutely clear. But they're asking for as much support as possible. Anyone with the time, with the ability, with the free time, the ability, they need to get to Boston. They need to get on a bus or a train and get to Boston. The battle lines are drawn and the fight is about to get more intense. So many young people hate capitalism, yet they feel powerless and really feel like there's nothing they can do. They have no job, or if they do, it's a dead-end, low-wage job. They feel as if they have no future. They sit around on the internet arguing, debating, and feeling lonely and worthless. Well, Boston is where revolutionary youth need to be. You don't need to be alone. You don't have to be hopeless. There is a battle about to open, and you can be part of it. The young people who are communists, young people who are anarchists, young people who just plain don't like capitalism, the young people who went down to Zuccotti Park in 2011, they need to go to Boston. Years from now, people are going to look back. They're going to look at how Veolia was brought in to crush the bus drivers' union. They're going to look at how Veolia specifically targeted the revolutionary leaders and sought to crush the union with extreme viciousness. But they're also going to look back at what happens next. But that's up to us.